What's going on, y'all? Donnie Black here for another episode on the House of Black podcast. This today is a special episode, and I know it's been a minute that I haven't done an episode in a while. I had tried to do this episode yesterday, but the mood setting was just not right. That my health situation was not right. But I'm on my bullshit today because I just came from therapy in some cases about it. So I want to talk about a certain topic today. I will talk about several topics, but I want to talk about the first one today. There's several topics I want to talk about today. The first one I want to talk about is one that is of utmost importance. Since my brother's passing, I have made a commitment to now become part of the Black comic book community, where we have made it clear that we need representation. Since February of 2026, uh, there has been more than 1,000 days that one of my favorite comic companies, DC Comics, has rarely put out a main series, long running series for any of their black superheroes. Uh, Static, Black Lightning, Vixen, John Stewart, Green Lantern. There has been nothing of resources, of acknowledgement, or any information from any of these characters. I think the last one was Static series had just wrapped up, I think, with the Static Shock Batman Beyond crossover. I think that was the last one that's came out, which I will be picking that up. I picked that up already, which I already own. And a good friend of mine named JPE Numbra, who also is the host of Comics Unmasked podcast on TikTok, made it a significant uh, uh, notification about this. That it's been almost over 1,000 days that there has not been a black comic book character recognized in a series, a long running series on DC. As of this moment, Marvel just announced that they're doing a Bishop series, and it's not even a long running series on Marvel. It's not even a long series. Now, I love Bishop. Many of y'all know, if as X Men, Bishop is my second favorite character. Most of the X Men women are my favorite characters, but Bishop is my favorite X Men aside from Cyclops, in a sense. Um, and so this is very daunting, and I question on what the motive is for DC and Marvel. And so, as of these last few days during February on Black History Month, it was announced that DC was going to be doing a one-shot series for Milestone called "The New History of the DC Universe: The Dakota Incident." This book one-shot in honor of Black History Month, because usually they will do a book series called Power. They did it for 2 years, which I own the novelization for the first series, and then the second one, which is Power, aka the Power Company, which I don't own that one, but it will be in my possession soon. Um, but the Power book, which highlights many DC Black superheroes for Black History Month, didn't get a lot of attention. In fact, after the 2 issues, they stopped doing DC Power. It was there coincidentally for no different than DC Pride is for Pride Month. Um, but they've not done anything for Black History Month. And JP Numbra called them out about it, rightfully so, on his TikTok. Since then, it has been recognized that no black characters have been even given a series on DC. I have made it very clear on the fact in the TikToks of my own that, it's true. There's not been recognition about it, because he also stated that before Black History Month that people have made mention about Static, that since the Static season 3 wrapped up and that has been it for Static, people want more Static. And he said, and basically JP Numerous called them out saying, you don't care about Static. You want a Static Shot new animated series? You want Static the movie? You don't show appreciation for the comic. And he rightfully so made that awareness. And I also agreed with him on that because of the same thing of the signal. Because many of y'all have not known, Duke Thomas is my favorite DC Black hero character in the DC universe of the Bat universe, right up there with Luke and Jace Fox, the Fox sons of Lucius Fox, one who became Batwing and one that became a future Batman. Um, and I've noticed not many people talk about Duke Thomas. Not many people do. We have resorted to the last. You want to know the last recognition of Duke Thomas is as of right now? The Webtoon DC licensed series Batman Family Adventures. That is the last time we get any recognition of Duke fucking Thomas. And it disappoints me And I mentioned it in my TikTok. Many of you who have gone to my TikTok know I mentioned about this because I said the Signal had a series. He had a series, a mini series, a series that he was planning on getting released. It it was part of the Bat Files series. It was called the Batman Secret Files, and the first issue was released the moment that I first put out, because this is the cover for this issue, Batman Secret Files issue 1. This is not a one shot. This is issue 1 of the series. And after this issue came out, the moment that the sales came through and they were the lowest of sales, the series was canceled, pulled. This is my favorite character that was created by Snyder, and I am appalled that nobody talks about this book or the character of Duke Thomas. They don't take him as seriously. It has been overwhelmingly, and no hate to my boy Panda Red, no hate to my brother, rest in peace, but Jason Todd has been oversmutted. He has been oversmutted too much. I swear, if anything, when it comes to the Robins or former Robins, it has been Jason Todd #1 in all of them. I get it. He is a very recognizable character. He's a very likable character because he's the one that changed things to the narrative for Bruce Wayne. But nobody gives any attention or respect to the others. They don't do much for Dick Grayson. They don't do much for Tim Drake, Red Robin. They don't do much for Nightwing, Dick Grayson. Hell, I know there are so many people, and unfortunately J.P. Numbers Imombo is one of them, but nobody people likes the Damian Wayne, who I personally think is the best Robin. I love Damian Wayne. I like him. I like his sternness. I like his simplicity. He's right up there with Bruce of it. Any character who is in the same mentality similar as Bruce when he's Batman is a win in my book. It's why I like Cassandra Cain. She's straight to the point. I don't want all the comical situations with these sidekicks. I don't. Jason Todd's right up there. But Jason isn't my favorite. Damian is my favorite. If Damian was not involved, Dick would be my favorite. But Tim Drake would be right after. Jason is not my favorite. Jason, I understood his recognition and his purpose, but he's not my favorite. And I know a lot of people would probably be mad that I said those words, but it's the truth. I don't like Dick Drake. I don't like Jason Todd. I don't care for Red Hood. I don't. But in any case, when it comes to the character of the other Robins, specifically Duke Thomas, who had his own segment in, I believe, Zero Year, when he was a younger boy. That's how he got to know Bruce, was, I believe, through Zero Year. This is the last novel that had Duke Thomas in it, and it was pulled after it didn't do well in the sales. And from this moment on, it pissed me off. Now, the same thing happened when it came to Milestone, when I found out about this series called Shadow Cabinet. Shadow Cabinet is a 4-part series that deals with many of the characters of the Milestone universe. I have yet to hear anybody talk about this book. This book came out 2 years ago, I believe, and nobody talks about this book. This series. Nobody does. This is all 4 issues in one pack, but nobody talks about this book series. Nobody. And I never understood why that was. When Milestone Returns came out with the Milestone book, the first Milestone Returns book, I picked it up. When they put out the compendium, I bought that. And to this day, at that moment, nothing came from that. And it pissed me off. So when JP made this video when they hit that video on TikTok, it got my attention. So later down the line, it got the attention of a writer from DC by the name of Joseph Ildridge, who I have the honor of following on my Twitter. I'm going to pull him up on here. Joseph P. Ildridge. This man is a writer for the DC universe. He is a writer for DC superheroes. He also is a writer who has contributed to the latest book that has been out as of now for a month, which is the news story of the DC universe, the Dakota incident. He is a writer for this book. Another person who also has contributed to this book is a writer by the name of, is an artist and writer that I am a fan of, named Nicholas Draper Ivy. He has done artwork for Static Season 1 as well as Season 3. He is also a writer on on the Dakota Incident book. Another person who has also contributed, who I have on here, is Morgan Hampton. He also has written for the DC Dakota Incident. He also is responsible for writing Cyborg series that was cut short, and Green Lantern. He has also contributed to. And then one other person that I believe I also have, I follow in a sense of it. But I'm trying to find out who it is of it, but I may have to look for them later. But these men have all contributed to the DC, the Dakota Incident book. Now, the task that Joseph P. Illich wanted to put is to say, if we want to get DC's attention, maybe if we make this book a bestseller, DC will realize with the sales and the interest that they will now make recognition to say, maybe we start putting in recognition for these books. So his challenge was for us, the Black comic book community and the comic book community, to show it out in action by making well established that we like this universe. We want more of these characters to be recognized. And the only way we can do it is by purchasing the books. So according to what JP found out, and this is something I didn't find out, the sales of books recognition that take into the mark aren't prepaid books that are already released and purchased. It's not. It's through pre-orders. And this was something new to me. So in order to get recognition on those sales, you have to get pre-orders. If you get the pre-orders, those count for sales and recognition in comic books. So when you pre-order a book, even if you don't buy it, that still is recognized for DC sales. That's how they do it. It's not just going to the comic shop, your local comic shop, and buying the already released issue. Now, I used to think, oh, I'll just go to this comic shop, pick up the issue, and it's there. No, it's actually if you pre-order the book, what book series it is. That's how you get the recognition. So when I found out about that, so the task is that Joseph gave us is pre-order the book. Pre-order as many of the copies if you can, every variant if you can. But if you do, DC will recognize you. It may get DC's attention to realize, hey, this book is doing very successfully well. Maybe we should start looking into using those characters after all into the DC universe, because this book basically brings in the connection of the Dakota universe, which is Milestone Media. Every character from Milestone Media connecting finally into the DC universe, because for years they never really interacted with most of the DC characters, with the exception of one character, Static, of course, because he was the most popular character that Dwayne McDuffie, the creator of Milestone and the part creator of Static, brought into the table when he was brought in for DC, for Warner Brothers and DC Animation. When he worked on Justice League in some cases, he was brought in to contribute for Justice League, and in exchange of that, he brought Static out of all the characters. That's how the Static Shock cartoon series became what it is, because of him bringing it into the show, pitching that character to DC Comics. Once he did that, it got DC's attention to say, we'll pitch this. We'll make this a series. DC ended up realizing that, and it became established that DC would later on have the attention to pitch the show to the point where the character would interact with other characters in the DC universe, including Green Lantern, Batman, Superman, and some of the Justice League as well, including John Stewart, aka Green Lantern. This is the cover for one of the issues of the Static Shock comic book that was released in recognition, which is why this cover shows the comic book version of Static, but in the reflection, you can see the cartoon version of Static Shock, because this was the Static comic series that was launched to companion to the Static Shock cartoon series. But the book had done mediocrely well, but at the same time, it became a secondary thought of it when Dwayne started working on Young Justice, which would be his last contribution for DC Animation before his passing. In fact, that's how Icon, Rocket, and Static are all on the animated series, because many people don't know this, or unless you watched the Young Justice series, those characters are in the DC Animated Universe, are only in there through, through the Young Justice universe. This is a screen capture of Icon, and this is Rocket. Milestone characters in a DC animated series, Young Justice. These are the only other characters that have interacted with the DC characters other than certain comics. Like this one, which is the Young Justice Milestone comic book. But again, most times with the main universe, they don't really show that they didn't have much interaction with those characters. And that's why we said we need these characters to get recognition. If Dwayne was able to bring these characters into an animated universe to get attention, why didn't nobody pay attention? This is what we wanted. This is why we need this book to do successfully well, the Dakota Incident book. So, of course, your boy's got to put up or shut up, and I was able to pre-order an issue. This is the standard cover of the issue of the one shot. This is a one shot, unfortunately, but it could be the lead on to the next motive of DC with Milestone. But this, I own this issue, and then that issue I had pre-ordered in the sense of it, and but I wasn't able to get the pre-orders for the other variants because they ran out. But there was one issue I had to buy, even if it was off the rack. So, if you have not watched the episode, if you have not listened to or watched the episode where I discussed the passing of my brother was a big Superman fan, and I wanted to get one of the specific variants in his honor, because he was a huge comic book fan, just like I was. In fact, he always joked around with me about me getting back into comic books, because I really wasn't a fan of comic books, because at one point, I won't lie, I was reading manga only, because most of the comics that came out around the time were not interesting to me. But now, I've been back in the comics for the last 5-6 years. I've been back into the comics, and I've been deeply rooted back into the comic books. Before his passing was a lot of moments where I would talk about those comics. In fact, this last contribution before his passing, he bought a double figure set of the Bruce Timm animated series versions of Batman and Superman for his oldest son, which I will be talking to. I'm going to be getting him into comic books as well. I feel it's my due diligence, which is funny because my brother and I got into comics because my cousin got us into comic books, not my dad. But that's here or there. But there was one cover that featured Superman on it, but it also featured our equivalents to Superman, Icon. And that was the cover that was done by one of the founding members of Milestone Media, which was Dennis Kwan. Dennis Kwan did a variant cover for Batman Superman. Now, that variant is shown here. This also reminded me of the issue 29 of Superman, which is the Worlds Collide, in which Batman teams up with characters of Milestone, including Static and Icon. And this is long-haired returning Superman, because I almost forgot about this, along with the companion issue of Icon that featured Superman involved. And so this is the variant that Dennis Kwan did that I had to pick up. So, yeah. Denise Kwan, I did this cover with Superman and Icon. And now, again, I'm not a Superman person, but I got this in my brother's honor. I had to. So this is the variant that I own. And I will plan on buying the other variants once the pre-order comes too, because since then, they have now done, it has been the highest selling book in DC. And because of that, we are going to be getting a second printing, which is awesome. I'm actually happy to hear about that. So now, despite the fact that we are getting that second pressing, we still need to do the work. The job is not done yet. We need to do more of the work, which is why we have been asking people, if you didn't get a pre-order from the first pressing, this is the time to do that again now. Get that second pre-order in. So we're on the task of doing that, because we are not letting our foot off the necks of DC to let them know this is important to us. So it's been very well done, very well successful case of it. And, I'm so happy that the people revolver on it have been doing it. And it's been already verified that the second pressing could be happening, and we could even be getting a third pressing. However, As of recent, I have noticed that there's been a lot of writers, a lot of people who are black comic book fans who have been very much, unfortunately, not well received since of it. Case in point, I want to bring up a highlight with one person who JP actually interacted with in a sense of it. This is from a user named Cosmortal Comics or Converse Comics. He basically posts this: people will say support black characters and have this lineup. And the lineup is Miles Morales as Spider Man, Riri Williams, aka Ironheart, who is apparently who people consider the equivalent to Iron Man, Sam Wilson, formerly the Falcon, who is our current Captain America, and and our Black Superman, which is funny because, in a sense of it, his profile picture looks like an AI version of that Black Superman. So his thing is basically saying, we can't come up with our own characters. We got to be riding high, successful, supporting black characters, but the only characters they support are black characters of other superheroes: Iron Man, Spider Man, Captain America, and Superman. And that's not true. That's not true. In which my boy JP even brings up about the fact of, Mr. Terrific, Green Lantern's John Stewart, and even Mr. Miracle, who is a black character. I forgot about that. But then controversial or Cosmodo Comics decided to bring up about this. Now, this was a one-shot series from Marvel called What If Thor was picked by Miles Morales. And I'm not going to lie, this was an abomination. It was. Miles Morales as Thor, this was the worst thing that Marvel could have done. It was terrible. And I knew it was terrible the moment I saw the cover. That's the worst part. I knew it was going to be bad the moment I saw the cover. I said, this was a blaxploitation of abomination that never needed to happen. But basically the Converse said this was hateful. I don't want to hear how someone much tried when characters like Miles were used to make a mockery of black people. The streets was Asgard, the hood. This was abomination. I am not going to lie. I'm not going to lie. It was, but that does not change the fact of Miles made himself different on his case as Spider-Man compared to what's his name, to Peter. I hate that JP tried his best to try to denounce on that situation because, unfortunately, it did not change the mind of many other people who basically he tried to defend. He tried to argue about the situation because he's like, I'm not going to condone one writer's poor interpretation of a character when I can point to this creator and his most recent writer pouring into souls and making Miles a phenomenal character. Was the poor crap dumb and horrible? Most definitely, but that doesn't define Miles, and it's the truth. But again, he was standing on his own because there are people who were like, what defines Miles is the fact that he is a cheap knockoff who only exists to check a diversity box. His creator never gave an actual crap, and none of his writers are either. Miles Morales is a stain on Marvel, and his fans bright on the fandom. That is not true. That is not true. Brian Bendis adopted black kids, and none of the kids, including one of his children who was a fan of Spider-Man, did not see themselves in Spider-Man because he was not black. So he wanted to create a character that would be the better representation for his kid. And I know this because I watched an interview that Brian did himself. He said, I wanted to make a character, a version of Spider-Man that would be a good representation for my kids, that they saw themselves in Spider-Man. This was not made to be an equivalent of DEI. That is not what Miles Morales was. And yet people like this guy wants to say, oh, it was just a DEI hire. That's some bullshit. It was not. It was not. Brian made the character specifically because of the fact that he wanted to see a representation that his kid can read. But then he wants to bring up about Miguel. Spider-Man 2099. Here's the problem, Brandon and Awesome. Miguel was a diversity hire because it was part of a 2099 series that Marvel pitched to have of a representation. He wasn't even supposed to be Hispanic. It was the last minute within the story arc that they made him Hispanic. He was not supposed to be Hispanic. And again, the 2099 series didn't do as well as people thought. It became a cult following afterwards. The series was canceled after, I think, over 100 issues. So for you to try to use this as an excuse is a dumb fucking take. It really is. But this pissed me off. People like this piss me off. Yet you got a Transformer picture on your profile, but not as much as the Conversion Comics. Just wanted to say something, but yeah, it's so Miles even James even had to bring it up. It's sad that you feel you can just police how people interact and interpret comics. It's so sad that you operate in this limited capacity. I've watched you make a fool of yourself in my replies, and it's just been sad to see how disrespectful you can be to people. You know, and that's the thing. A lot of people didn't know Mr. Miracle was black, which is why I've told people online my take on girls who are in the situation. Big Barda, his lady, that's my girl. As much as Wonder Woman is the shit, Big Barda is way better in my opinion. That girl is the shit, and I love Mr. Miracle because of the fact of him being black. But yes, yes, a lot of people made there were two Mr. Miracles, Scott Free and Shiloh Norman. Shiloh Norman is the black one. Scott Free is the white one. But yeah, Mr. Miracle is black. But yeah, many people don't know that. Many people don't know that. But of course, somebody's going to say in the sense of, oh, he was just a DEI hire. Here's my take, and I actually posted about this after I saw that comment from Compendium Comics, whatever his name is. And I'm actually going to stand on why I'm explaining this because some people probably didn't even know. So here's my 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 take. Because I said when there are readers who feel one bad writing of a character makes up for over the years of the good the character is representing in the comics, it's disappointing. JP is speaking facts on the fact Miles having one bad issue doesn't define his years of good stories he had, which is what I said before. Just because one story did bad for Miles does not define his entire run in the comics. And this is my unpopular opinion. Here it is. When black comic fans are hateful like this, it makes me glad they don't write black indie stories themselves. Both can coexist without bashing the others. If you're going to be that hateful, it's the reason why the black indie comic book characters won't get ahead. And that's the honest to God truth. Now, let me explain why I said this, because some people are going to probably misconstrue about it. I'm not just talking about the people who are saying this. I'm also talking about the people who are black indie comic book writers who are hateful like this because they are not in the big comic books themselves. It's all fine to support black comic book indie writers and artists. No one is taking that away because sometimes you got to do it yourself when the big corporations aren't willing to succeed what you are. It happens a lot in the industry. It does. But when you're that much spiteful that you don't want to see somebody else who's working in a corporate that you weren't able to do, but they're able to do well to the point where they're making a character that is a better representation, that is a good representation of our community, and they're getting an opportunity to do well, to represent for us, and you want to be hateful about it, even if it's a character that's taking up the mantle of another character that was not white, like the four that Cosmortal Comics puts in his post about Spider-Man, Captain America, Superman, and Iron Man. You want to be hateful like this, if you are an artist, a black indie comic artist that's saying this, you don't deserve to have your comics recognized. You don't. You don't get to speak for the comic book industry in the black community. You don't. Because I'm tired of the narrative that black comic book artists and indie writers have to be bitter over the bigger company writers and artists of the black community who are actually having the ability to use their platform in a bigger scale to put a representation for us. You wouldn't even have the career of being an indie black comic book writer if it wasn't for companies like DC and Marvel even giving a chance to put us on a platform, even giving Dwayne McDuffie a chance to run Milestone for what it is. Because I can tell you, everyone in my generation who owns an indie comic book company has been inspired by Milestone. Some of them have even said at one point they'd rather Milestone be an indie company themselves. if DC's not willing to recognize them. But Milestone's existence wouldn't be it wouldn't be what it is. Y'all didn't get responsibly inspired by them, and for you to be that bitter to say shit like this is exactly why you're in the shithole of not getting your comic book recognition. You wonder why there are people in the community who don't speak about your comic book. You wonder why there are people who will not support your comic book if you're being this bitter. And if you're a comic book fan and not a writer and artist, you don't get to do that. You don't speak for everybody else this way. You don't feel that way? Go ahead and stick with those indie comics that aren't doing well. Do that. Because we don't need it. Because you don't speak for me and every other black comic book fan who recognizes those characters, the ones that have taken up the mantle of other superheroes that were white or other countries or other planets. And I was raised on. Okay? You're not. We have a black Captain America that is on our film screens right now and TV screens. We rarely even get that. Anthony Mackie has to deal with that every fucking day, people saying that he's not Captain America. To the point now that Doomsday, Russos are going to renege the situation by bringing Chris Evans back as Captain America. Why? Why? Because people didn't like New World Order or Brave New World? That's some bitter ass shit. And Marvel knows it. That's the only reason why they're doing this. Yeah, I saw the last trailer for Doomsday. Chris Evans is back as Steve Rogers. Why? He passed the baton to Sam. It's in the comic books, and yet y'all keep saying it's not my captain. And it's the white people saying it's even worse. It's even the white people. That's even worse when it's other than the black community. It's white people saying it too. We have enough of that as it is. Why are we having this? Why? That, ladies and gentlemen, is why I meant when I said about my unpopular opinion. And I stand on that shit. You don't get, you being an indie black comic book artist and writer, being bitter that a black major corporation's company's comic book character of color is getting recognition to the point people are paying attention. You want to be mad that Miles Morales has gotten so much success that it's attached to the point that he's in a video game from PlayStation that's been successfully well. He has a movie series that has done successfully well from Sony Pictures, that he has been recognized in every animated adaptation of Spider-Man that has come out within the last 2010. But you're mad because he's taking up the mantle of Peter Parker and he's not the original. That's some bitter ass shit. And if you're an artist, black comic artist saying this, you don't deserve to have a platform to show your comics. You don't. That's what I'm trying to state. It's tit for tat. It's horrible to do that. It's horrible to do that and not be. We should be supporting each other. If we can be people who can pick up a DC and Marvel comic book with a black superhero in it, that can pick up an indie black comic book from an indie comic book creator and writer and think of them no different and make them equal. It should be the same thing when it comes to black characters in major comic books, even if they're taking up the mantle of a superhero that was not black, including the four that Cosmortal Comics has spoke about in his Twitter. What makes them any different just because a white person had those mantles of them? And again, most of those all have done what they have of, yeah, I'm going to be recognized or associated with the original, but I'm making them very different on their approach of things. All four of those characters. The only one that's really not even Iron Man technically in a sense is Riri. Riri's not Iron Man. In the comic books, sure, the only association she had with Tony Stark is an AI, which is supposed to be similar to Jarvis. That is it. But because of those comic books, and Tony involved in those comic books to some extent, even in an AI form, that's why they're putting her as Iron Man. That's why the show didn't do so well in the sense of it. And it's messed up that happened. It is. It did not deserve to do that. And it's a constant thing. And as much as we deal with people on the outside of our community who are being this hateful of it, it's worse when it's our own community being this way. I mean, hell, there are even some people, I can't find the tweet, but there are even some people who are going out to say, hey, you know, uh, uh, we just because the static comic book cartoon came from the comic books doesn't mean we care about the comic books. I shit you not. There are people who actually said this, that the Static Shock cartoon series is more important than the comic books. That we don't care if the comic books come back. That's why we didn't pick up the comics, because we don't care for them. We care about the cartoon series. So you want to tell me you want to feed off of your cartoon nostalgia for a media that was inspired by another source material that has more fleshed out of the character than any of the cartoons within the 4 seasons of the cartoon couldn't manage to do. You mean to tell me you find that more important? When honestly, that cartoon wouldn't even exist if it wasn't for the source fucking material. And this is the type of shit that we have to deal with, that I have seen JP have to debate with. I have seen him on live stream talk about this same situations on his broadcast and his channel and platform. Hell, we all know about what happened with the Comics Explained YouTuber. A YouTuber of color who considers himself a comic novice basically stated he doesn't want to talk about the Milestone the Dakota incident, because him talking about Milestone or black characters in Milestone is like basically political. And the fact that comparing it to FUBU, and let me make this clear because some of y'all didn't know this, because I'm a person who actually does the information about it. One of the judges of Shark Tank is actually one of the judges of Shark Tank is actually one of the founders of FUBU, Damon John. Damon Garfield John is the CEO of FUBU. He also is the producer of Shark Tank. But yes, Damon John is the CEO of FUBU. This man right here. He is the CEO of FUBU. And it is also well established that he has taken money from outside of our minority. Now, for those out there who don't know what I'm talking about, put 2 and 2 together, what we see in the political situations as of now. Put 2 together, if you can put that together. You're smart. You know what I'm talking about. But yes, even though this company FUBU was meant to be the acronym it stands for, it's a clothing company that was meant for only our community. Hence the name of the company's name, for us, by us. Yet you're taking corporate money from outside of our community, Damon. Because let's face it, him, Kevin O'Leary, I don't trust him $1 a day. Mark Cuban's the only one that gets a little bit slack, because he's been very open, especially with political situations now. He has made it very clear on the fact of his former friendship with our current fucking president that he is disgusted of. And he's like, I'm not friends with him anymore. And he's been very open about those situations and doing everything he can to use his money and wealth to help other people who are dealing with this man's tyranny. I give him credit, but I have not seen anything from Damon John. Nothing. That's why I said FUBU ain't what it used to be. It ain't. So when it comes to that comparison that Comics Explained did, that made it even more offensive for me compared to everybody else. So, but of course, when he realized how successful the book has been getting, he decided to jump on the bandwagon and got a video up. And he's doing it just for a cash grab. I said this in my TikTok. He's doing it for the cash grab. He's basically saying, well, I see how successful this book is, so I'm going to just jump on the bandwagon so I can get some money out of it. I'm going to monetize my video and make a review about it, even though I don't really want to. That's some bullshit, and he knows it. But there are black influencers like this. Shine Comics, a perfect example. If you know who Shine Comics is, I don't need to tell you. JP still wants to give that man redemption. That is his decision. But everything that Shine has talked about is garbage. And he says basically the same thing that Cosmortal Comics has stated when it came to the black superheroes that are taking up the mantle of superheroes that were white. He said the same thing. Even though I have never seen this man mention anything, he wants to mention about anything of black comic books and non-black comic books, yet he's going to say this about black comic book characters. And I've yet to see this man even talk about black comic book, indie comic books. I've yet to see him talk about that. That brings me to another question. How the hell are you going to say we should support indie black comic book creators and you've never once talked about black indie comic books characters or writers? Not once. Before I even blocked him on social media. Not once. I have seen him talk about on his platform every major comic book, even comic books of characters that are not black. But yet you want to say we don't need to be worshiping black superheroes that are taking up the mantle of other superheroes. You know you're a fucking hypocrite for that, right? And that's why I don't take him seriously. People like him, or even, unfortunately, King Lion, which I'm not going to slander King Lion. I just don't respectfully want to connect myself with him. He can have his own decisions. How he feels, though, about black anime is ridiculous, though. That's my only thing I will say about it. Because he feels like if it's not black anime, then it's not necessary. And I'm like, you do know anime has to be made in Japan. That's why it's termed as anime is from. It's Japan. Unless there's a bigger Blasian community, it makes no sense for you to say, oh, we need to have a black anime in Japan and not a lot of fans. It's bad enough we get the rep that a lot of black people in Japan aren't really safe a sense of it. Because I have to bring up the fact that there's a chicken and waffle place in Japan that's owned by a black family is done successfully well. We at least have that. But look what it took. A chicken and waffle restaurant, which is like a novelty to the Japanese community in some cases. Hell, my mother was hesitant to let me go to Japan because of the fact that she thought I would be dealing with discrimination in Japan. When there have been many times the black community has gotten a lot of recognition there. And not to mention, our influence to the Japanese community, everything from hip-hop to fashion, has been influenced from us to their community. While we have been influenced by their community with everything in arts and entertainment. It's a cultural exchange. I had to explain this to my mom, of all people, because my mom was in that same old state that people like my dad would talk about. But neither here nor there in the situation, because I'm going to come back to the positive sense of it. But that's what I wanted to bring up when it comes to this situation. Do not try to dismay any positivity of black characters, black writers, and artists in the major companies of comic books who are able to have the ability to highlight their platform, to highlight their characters and others. If there is even one comic book character of color, especially a black superhero in DC or Marvel that is getting enough attention to get a continuing series and is successfully well, that is still a win for us. And indie comic book writers and artists of the black community should be happy for that. Because when one wins, we all win. You shouldn't be dismissive because they are taking up the mantle of another superhero. When one wins, we all win. Because there, at one point in time, we didn't get nothing. We're lucky enough, we're having artists who are black in these companies doing black characters. Because let's not forget, most of the early black characters were made by white people. Stan Lee made Black Panther. But it took other writers, Ta-Nehisi Coates, to Christopher Priest, and so forth, to make these characters more blacker. Black Lightning, I believe, was made by a white person. If I'm correct, Black Lightning was a character that was created by Trevor Von Eden, who is Guyanese American, and Jenny Blake Isabella, who is a white person. They created the character back in 1970. A Guyanese and a white woman created Black Lightning, but it took black writers and artists in the years later to make him define more. What we wouldn't have them if it didn't get the boost of the characters first off. We needed to get them kicked off. We made them. They made the characters. We made them better. We made them relatable. We made them more black. But we wouldn't have, but at the time when they were created, we didn't even have the platform to be able to make the characters in general. You have to look at it that way. You have to look at it that way. We wouldn't have been able to pierce. Jefferson Pierce needed to be made on paper, even if it was from a white person. But we needed that person to be shown first to give attention. If we didn't, in the 70s, 60s, when the time segregation and civil rights was still a thing, we could barely get those characters ourselves off of TV. You mean to tell me at a time with segregation and civil rights was still a thing that a black artist could pitch a character of black superhero to a white company? Hell no. But if a white person pitched it, it just later on the down, when civil rights, equality of jobs and DEI was becoming a thing, that writers and artists of color were able to jump into those characters and take those characters and made them more of the fine of our culture and our community that made them better. That's what it happened. It took that for it to happen. So when you tell me that because a white character took over these characters, or at some point because they're taking up the mantle and you don't want to support them because they're not original, you're spitting in the face of the people who gave us at least a footnote in the door to let us be able to have the platform to do these comic book characters. That's why it's disrespectful for people like Cosmortal Comics said what he said. Because you don't understand the fact that you wouldn't even have the platform to make your comic book characters at a time where black superheroes were not taken seriously. If it wasn't for those white people who created those characters and the platform, it made the way door through the damn door. Yes, they were not black people who made those characters, some of them. But at the same time, if it wasn't for those characters getting their fucking foot in the door, we wouldn't have been able to use our platform and our abilities as writers and artists to help make them better in the years later. It's with every black character in every universe, with the exception of certain ones that were made during the time period of the later 90s when comic book characters and black artists and writers were hired to make these characters, like Static and Milestone. The 90s, I believe 92 or 96, is when Milestone Media was developed. At the time, Dennis Quine, Reginald Hilton, Dwayne McDuffie, and so on, would end up getting hired by companies like DC to work on these comic book characters and have the platform to make these characters on ground up. But you want to get mad at characters like these because they're, in your eyes, no different than rip-off of black versions of these characters, and they're not original. Be so for fucking real, buddy. Be so fucking for real. So that's what pissed me off about that tweet alone, and several others. And I have seen this happen time after time, day after day. To the point now, they're coming to the point where they're even slandering the fact about this book, saying about this one shot by saying, "Oh, why is it that we got to say yes, master, no, master to pick up this book so we can get DC's attention?" It's not about that book on doing a sale of getting the book to support it. It's about the simplicity of saying, "Hey, we want to make sure that y'all know this book counts for something. These characters mean something. If you're going to bring them into this universe, don't fade them in the background with all the other characters that we barely see anymore. Let them be just as recognized as every character in the DC universe you put them up with Superman, with Batman, with Wonder Woman, with Green Lantern, with and most of the main characters. Tell me something. When Doomsday Clock came out, integrated Alan Moore's universe of Watchmen with the DC characters, how many times have you seen a Silk Spectre comic book, an Obsidian comic book, a Rorschach comic book, a Comedian comic book, even if it's a prequel, even it's prequels, a Night Owl comic book? Exactly. The last time I saw recognition with those characters was Doomsday Clock series, and after it wrapped up, that was it. And these are just white characters from Alan Moore's universe, coinciding with the DC universe because of the Button, which was a Flash Batman One Piece. After that One Piece led the events of Doomsday Clock. But again, the Button book led to what it is. But again, we have not seen anything from those characters. Rorschach, if anything, because he's the most popular character out of all of them. The same can be done, that's going to happen with the Milestone characters if we don't make the initiative to let DC know this needs to change. That is why we are making it recognized, even if simple, that we care about these characters, that we are purchasing this book to prove to you that we care for these characters, that we care for the writers in this book, for the characters in this book, for the story that's in this book. We care. It ain't just to say we gonna make money. We gonna have money for DC. We're showing we care. That is the initiative. And that's why I thank JP Numbra for making the initiative happen for this. You know, if you have not watched his podcast, again, Comics Unmasked with Joseph Illidge, I would suggest you go do so. Please go do that and watch it. It's a very important interview that Joseph goes into detail about the things that went on when he worked for Milestone and the recurring situation of what could be deja vu for him when it comes to the Milestone universe if we don't make the initiative for what it is. I said for myself, my purpose of it, not just the comic books, but also expand in media. You want a Static Shock video game? The books need to be so successful. You want a new Static Shock cartoon? You got to get the book successful. You want to create an Icon and Rocket series, live action series? You got to show that the books are a purpose. Hell, we're supposed to be getting a Static Shock animated live action movie 4 years ago. Since it was announced by Reginald Hudlin and Dennis Kawai, we have not heard anything. No casting, no writer, no screenwriter, no director, no producers, nothing. Not even Warner Brothers has stated a word. Hell, James Gunn has been asked about these, and he says, I can't give any information. Why? Because we don't know if the comics are done well. DC doesn't know the comics are doing well. If the comics aren't doing well, what makes you think they're going to be successful for the movies or the animated shows or any other media? You got to have the success for the books. The source material counts. This is why this initiative is abso-fucking-lutely necessary and continue whether we get a second pressing, a third pressing, a fourth pressing, a fifth pressing, a sixth pressing. It doesn't matter how many pressings. If it gets more than 3 or 4 pressings, that should give enough attention for DC to say, you know what, maybe we should start looking into using these characters again because it's popular, because they're actually people are paying attention to these character stories. And it ain't just, again, going to the comic book shop and buying them off the rack. It's the pre-orders. The pre-orders is what counts. So by the time this episode is up, if you have not pre-ordered your copy of the second or third pressings of the Dakota incident, do your diligence to do so now. If you support these characters, if you support this initiative, if you think that black characters, especially the Milestone media universe, the Dakotaverse, these characters count. You care about Static, you care about Icon and Rocket, you care about Hardware, you care about Blood Syndicate, buy, reorder this book series. Get it to what it needs to get a recognition. And not to mention, again, the bonus is that the book story is actually good. Now, I won't spoil much on the book, but we get introduced to a character who is trained under Static, Virgil, by the name of Beacon. He is the son of Rocket. He also happens to work in the future. The state of his future is destroyed because of events that happened in the past. It also leads to the story of what happens to Static and the characters of DC Universe of Milestone, along with the connection with Amanda Waller and Lex Luthor, who is the president. And it's so necessary on that situation, leading to the events of Static maybe coming back. But even after this one shot, we need to continue that story. And the only way we can do that is if we can get the book, if we can get the attention from people in DC to say this book counts. The last time that we had a chance to do that was the Power books. This is the first issue of Power Rise of the Power Company, which was a book series that DC did for Black History Month. And as you can see here, Black Shazam and Vixen are on the cover. This was the one of 4 issues, if I'm correct. Now, I don't have the other issues, but I do plan on buying the other ones. But I do have the novelization of the first issue of Power graphic novel. I own that. So, with that being stated about it, don't disrespect black characters in that sense. Please don't. It makes complete sense for why that is. Please understand that. If anything, um, hopefully in the next few coming days of it, I know that Joseph has given us the opportunity. So JP had also let me know, informed us that at one point DC didn't have. There was a documentary that was released during the celebration of the return of Milestone. It was a documentary that was airing on DC's Universe streaming channel that was also on HBO Max. It was a movie called Milestone Generations. It was narrated by Method Man. It told the history of Milestone Media as well as its resurgence and the plans that it was planning to go forward with since the return of the Milestone characters. Interviews with Dennis, Dwayne, Reginald, everyone involved in Milestone. Um, it was basically initiative of this, along with the Ally Bank program that they were working on together to bring in new artists who are from HBCUs and others who are wanting to bring their contributions to the Milestone Media universe. That is all that we have heard from them before we got the other books in the Milestone Media universe. And from that moment, as I said before, the last time that I knew we got anything from Milestone was Milestone in History, which I pre-ordered this when it came out. And then, of course, the Milestone Returns Zero book that came out that launched the return of Milestone officially. These are the only books that I know that, when launching, along with the other books from Milestone, that got barely attention of it. But since then, after Shadow Cabinet, that was it. We need to change that. But with this documentary, it was taken off streaming networks. But fortunately, a digital copy Joseph had, and I possess of it now. And hopefully, I will be streaming it myself if it comes to some point, depending on the group of people that I can bring up to it. But I've watched it a couple times. I'm so happy that JP was able to share that with us and everything. But yeah, and by the way, JP, he practices what he preaches, because as you can see here, he owns so far 4 of the compendiums, which are collective books for every Milestone character and series. So the man practices what he preaches. But again, I need y'all to follow him because brother's putting in his work. And I'm hoping eventually we'll be working together very soon. He's a very damn good journalist. I applaud him for making this initiative happen because it's something that we in the comic book community have. My nephew, my brother's young oldest son, is just getting into comic books. His favorite is Miles Morales. And since my brother's passing, he has not been able to learn about the world of comic books. And I plan on helping him. And I want him to see characters that are not just Miles Morales. Characters like Static, characters like Icon, characters like Hardware, when he gets older, of black characters, even if they're characters that are taking up the mantle of other characters in Marvel and DC that look like him. And I want him to I want him to appreciate that in every spectacle. That's my reason of wanting to contribute to this initiative. Shout out to Joseph Illage, who follows me on Twitter. I'm honored that he's following me on Twitter. If anything, y'all do your diligence to follow him. Also, shout out to all the artists and writers who were part of course, the book itself of the DC Dakotaverse. Shout out to everybody who was involved with it. That includes, of course, the people such as Nicholas Draper Ivy, Morgan Hampton, and of course many others who were involved in the DC universe in the sense of Milestone and the Dakota incident. I'm hoping this book does well, that we will be able to see more stories from these characters. And hopefully, other characters outside of Milestone of our community will get a chance to get attention as well. Characters like Cyborg, like Vixen, Black Lightning, and of course my boy Duke Thomas. I want more Duke Thomas. Nothing would make me more happy to know that Duke gets his due. So, I have my books over here a bit. But at the same time, I do want to also give a shout out to many of the indie artists and the black indie comic book artists who have done their diligence in this community, who have supported us, who have done the initiative to be happy that this is becoming a thing now. Because if, again, when one of us wins, we all win for this community. I'm hoping that eventually me and JP will link up and do a lot of more future things soon in this initiative and beyond. He's already expressed that he wants to work with me in my photography, which he knows I'm definitely down to do that. He already knows that. He's already know. With that being said, that is pretty much the gist of today's episode I want to talk to you about. Unless anything else comes up, there may be a possibility that I may have another episode in the horizon. But at the same time, don't give up on these characters. We can't. DC and Marvel, if you ever watch this, don't give up on these characters. Marvel, you have some work to do. You have put more out there for us, but you have some work to do. But DC, you are losing so much in contribution sense. Because I, being the Batman fan, am even saying this because JP Engine mentioned this, which is a take that I actually agree with him on. And me being the heavy Batman fan, I've made it very clear. We don't need any more Batman books. We have enough. After what happened with Batman Eternal and the Batman Annual Series both getting canceled, we don't need more Batman books. We have enough. Shadow of the Bat needs to be the last one. Hush 2 is barely attention because after the second, third issue, it started going down a path I'm not okay with. I've met Jeff Loeb. I've met him. I've got a signature of my copy of Hush 2 because of him, and Hush 2 issue 1 because of him. I met Jeff Loeb. I'm honored that I met him. However, even I know you don't want to overdo it. You don't want to overdo it. So that's the one thing I'm honestly going to agree with him on. I'm actually going to agree with JP on. We don't need any more books. We don't need any more Batman books. We have enough. For the love of God Almighty, DC, we don't need any more. We don't. I wanted to express about this the most because of the simple fact that ever since this initiative happened, there's been good and there's been bad going on in this initiative. And I hate that people like JP getting the most hate for it in a sense of what he's trying to do to better for our community in the major corporations like DC. And the fact that people are not looking at that, but they're looking more in the fact of, we should be more representing for the black indie comic book artists. And I'm like, but there are black characters in the major companies that deserve just as much attention too. Why do you want to give them up just because you don't like them or the fact that they don't get more attention? They deserve just as much as well. They do. So I'm going to end it there for today's episode. If y'all got any questions, you can follow me on Twitter, Threads, Instagram, or you can go to my TikTok, all Donnie Black, if you want to check out more information or you want to ask me any questions about the episode. I'm hoping to have exclusive interviews from some fans very, very soon, along with the fact that I may have some guests coming on very, very soon in the process of working it. I'm sorry I'm taking a little long than usual. I do have another episode coming up later in this podcast soon. That'll be talking about something else personal for me, but it won't be put out yet, but it will be coming out soon. With that being said, I hope you guys enjoy today's episode. Hopefully you guys, there will be another episode soon. Thank y'all for watching and listening. Of course, while I used to have my website, drymedia.com, used to be my website. I always plug that in at the end. It's not up officially yet, but I do have a substitute website instead, which is now my Square site, which is dry-media dot square.site. That is my website as of now, where I'm taking bookings and such. This is my website now for the moment, because unfortunately the original website I had is no longer active. So this is my new website. Or you can just hit me up on my social media, including Instagram, if you want to message me about anything that deals with my work, or my email. But everything here for all my photography needs will be here as of this moment until I have a more suitable website. But with that being said, thank y'all for watching and listening to today's episode. I will catch y'all very soon, hopefully sooner than you think. And if you haven't picked up a pre-order of the books, do that now. Let's make this initiative mean something, because we need these heroes, not just for Black History Month, but for in general. I'll catch y'all in the next podcast episode. Y'all have a good one, and later days as always.